Hello, I'm alone in Finland. This is Farming Simulator. And don't click off just yet. It's not me playing the game, it is about the game, although it is actively playing in the background. So, one of the things that comes up an awful lot in sort of general comments and stuff like this that I receive is people talking about how if I'm so critical of a game, it's because I don't like it. Now, I can understand why you say this, because this is actually something that has come up in general an awful lot in my life, and that is because I have worked an awful lot in my life outside of Scotland, and I am aware that Scotland has a more abrupt sort of attitude, Scottish people in general, than other places. I have been referred to as the angry Scotsman. I have been referred to as one of the more direct people that have worked in places that I've been at. But I've also seen when other Scottish people come in, they have the exact same reputation, regardless of male or female, regardless of where from in Scotland, with a possible exception being down by the borders. In general, we are sort of, our culture is seen as a lot more direct. And that's sort of part of why I think I get a lot of these comments, is because in Scotland, if you see something wrong, you call it out. It is far more common for somebody to sort of make a comment when something is wrong, as opposed to think it's bad and walk away. A good example of sort of the mentality, that's a funny example, that I was being asked about something when I was going through my ADHD examination and testing and all this jazz, and they started talking about interpersonal violence and things like this as a child. And I'm sort of going, well, it's weird, because I'm doing this test in Finland. So they're talking about it as if it's not normal. And in Scotland, where I grew up, your sort of hierarchy amongst the children in school, at least on the male side, was kind of dictated by your ability to fight. So it was kind of weird to hear somebody saying, well, did you ever get into a fight as a child? And I'm sat there going, wait, are you telling me that you didn't? Is this unusual? And I was going through this and trying to sort of explain this to somebody who's looking at me as if it's weird to have been in a fight as a child. That for me, I got glasses and ginger hair. I was like that as a kid. That's a target. That's two separate targets on your back. And I was born in Scotland. So I'm in a place with a little bit higher level of interpersonal violence, shall we say. So it's a bit of a norm. Now, this led to me trying to explain this and finding out a particular statistic that I thought was both hysterical and horrendous, but it explained an awful lot. Between 1982 and 2002, Scotland had the highest rate of interpersonal violence per capita of any country in the world. It was almost 20% higher than the next country, which happened to be, I believe, the Democratic Republic of Congo. If you don't know, in that period between 1982 and 2002, there were several genuine genocides that happened throughout the world. And still, if we are talking individual sort of instances of violence, not how violent they were, so a fight as opposed to a murder would be considered the same thing, individual instances of violence were 20% higher in my country than anywhere else at that point where I was growing up. Now, I wasn't born in 82, I was born at a different time, but I was living through that time and being raised in it, and then being raised as a ginger person, as somebody with glasses, as somebody who's ADHD, who didn't know about it. So violence was normal to me. Violence was expected. But also, it's almost like the Charlton Heston way of thinking, where he sort of said I could be misquoting this, but it's something along the lines of a society where everybody is armed is a polite society. Well, while I don't agree with that for weapons, and yeah, I've had firearms licenses in the past, it is something that I do think Scottish get a reputation from people that have come to Scotland of being a very polite people, and part of that is in what's going on. I've seen some people that I would consider particularly low. We would call them Neds. I've seen somebody who I was expecting to mug an old guy who was, I want to say foreign, and I mean not from Scotland. The guy was probably West Indies through England and had lived in England for quite a while, but he was up in Scotland. and he was surrounded by this group of people that if I was surrounded by them, I would expect to be mugged. However, this group of people were perfectly polite. What actually happened was they escorted them. They said that they knew where he needed to go, and they escorted them to the back of Buchanan bus station, which would be the perfect place for mugging them. And me and another mate followed them because that's what we expected to happen. So we followed, expecting to have to intervene and knock the absolute hell out of these guys to stop them mugging someone. And as it happened, they escorted him to his bus, and then when he offered money as a thank you, they flat out refused. And these were kids that they were tracksuited and booted. In England, they would call them chavs. In Scotland, we would call them Neds. In Russia, the Slavic countries, they call them gopniks. They're not the greatest sort of politest part of society, but these kids were absolutely fine. They helped somebody who just needed help, and that was it. And it was partially because he was a little bit different. And I say partially because as they walked past us, they threatened me and my mate. And normally that would be case for words that would start a fight. But in this case, we were just like, bow out. Those kids did a good thing. It was a weird thing, a very weird bit. But it was a bit of personal pride in my culture. Now, the reason I talk about this being more abrupt is because it's most of my career outside of Scotland and places I've been. People do say that it's abrupt, but they will come to me for help, and it's because I have that reputation of being brutally honest. I don't sugarcoat anything. I don't use any sort of management words or anything like this. I am as straight-laced as it comes. If I see it, I call it. If it's good, it's good. It gets mentioned. I don't lavish praise on people. If they're doing a good job, I'll tell them they're doing a good job. If they're doing a bad job, I'll call them out for it. But that's not something that I see as unusual. And although I'm talking about this in a personal aspect, that's something that I've always existed in when I was working in Scotland. So coming outside of it, it's something I've always seen. And this is why I can understand that people that don't expect someone to be sort of aggressive towards the faults of things to actually still enjoy them. I've seen many a case of Scottish people being aggressive with each other and then after work having a drink. It's like, why are you not doing that? You're being stupid, you're doing this, you've done something wrong, blah 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 blah. Half an hour later, you go for a pint. Yeah, alright. And that's the sort of thing about it. So that brings us to Farming Simulator. There's a reason that this is in front of us right now, and it's because I like this game. I think this is a decent little game loop. And when I say this game, I mean Farming Simulator. Yes, there are different numbers behind different versions, but they haven't changed much. And it's actually part of why this game is here, because I don't like the company. I genuinely do not like the company. I do not have respect for them, and I think that they are particularly lazy, in my personal opinion, for what they do. And here's why. The guys at this company made the engine for the game, which shows that they have intelligence. They are decent developers that can do the work. Creating a game engine is not easy. Usually if you create a game engine, the reasons for being are, one, you're arrogant and you want to create a game engine. Two, you want to create a game engine because you don't want to have to give somebody else a slice of the pie when you make your game. Three, you want a game engine because you need it to do something that another game engine doesn't do well or just doesn't do. And four, as I would say, the last one is that you essentially want to create something that's more customizable. Something that, although other game engines could do it, you like the idea of this sort of going forward, that you know how to manipulate everything and nobody's going to change it in a way you don't want. So it's a bit of ownership. And Giant Software did this, and they did it quite well. However, the other side of this is that they are also clever. Now, people talk about intelligence in different ways, and there are multiple types of intelligence. But as a group, Giant Software are quite clever, because one of the genius moves that they did was when they were putting, I think it was the second Farming Simulator out there, they gave a ton of keys to YouTubers. And in some case, they just straight up gave like 10 keys to a YouTuber and said, play this with your friends, see what it's like. But they weren't going for their own niche. They weren't going for people that play simulation games, people that play farming games. In some cases, they were just going for idiots that just arse about on stream. Worst pre-made ever. They are the best example of this because they play on Twitch. They have video clips, sort of compilations that they put up on YouTube. It's a little bit of a laugh, a little bit of hilarity, and when they have been playing Farm Simulator, it's all over the place. Some of them are trying to do it seriously, some of them have no capability for seriousness. I genuinely enjoy this, but it also highlights a lot of the fuckery that's in this game. Because, with that being said, that Giant Software is clever, and that they made a good game engine, they also, in my opinion, are some of the laziest developers out there. Because at this point in time, there have been, I think, 5 iterations of this game, not including separate platform conversions and the VR conversion. And some of the folks that were in the first game are in the last one. They have done almost nothing to the game that wasn't in a mod that somebody else created, that they took the vast majority of and then put that out there. So for instance, they've brought weather into the game. That was one of the mods. They brought snow into the game. That was one of the mods. Seasons, one of the mods. They corrected the pathing slightly from one of the mods, because these little things occasionally will get to the end of the field and it will be an odd shape and it can't work its way to get back, because the only AI in this game is an AI that knows that this field in front of it should go to the end, turn round and come back. And sometimes if they're an odd shape, it can't find where to come back and it just says, hey, I'm done. And it's only done a quarter of the field, because as you can sort of see by a map here, not all of the fields are square, which makes sense. But a field like this would cause a pathing issue. And that was fixed a bit, but not completely. And in fact, the way that they fixed it wasn't as good as the original mod. So 2025 has a bigger problem with the fix than some of the mods that exist for 19. And this is the thing. This is why I think that they're lazy, is because they have not done what has been requested. If you take a combine harvester down one of these fields, for those of you that don't know farming, you have a combine harvester running the field, and then you'll have one, or in the case of local to me, we'll have 4 tractors running that go next to the thing, take the whatever's being harvested. Sometimes if it's a forager, it's just cutting grass and throwing. And you'll fill up the trailer, so the tractor will drive up next to it, fill up the trailer, the tractor will go back to wherever it's being dumped into, the clamp or somewhere else. And those tractors will be in a constant return. But in this game, you can set this AI to run the combine harvester, but then you need one person driving the tractor up to it. So if you're playing solo, you can do one field, but you don't have the ability to set up an AI to do the actual trailer run. You don't have the ability to set an AI to just drive down the roads and deliver things to different places. And this is where this game could be amazing. And some of the original talk around about it was that it was going to be something like Football Manager, where there is the ability to play the game, but the ability to manage it. So you could set up an AI to, you go and do that field, you go and do that field, you go and do that, and you could make it into a management sim, as opposed to a straight up simulation game where you can drive one vehicle at a time and not really do anything else. And that AI has been requested from the very beginning, and a decade later they haven't bothered to do it because it's complex. It's not that complex. Some people have made mods that have sort of equated this. A little bit more access to the actual engine underneath and it could be fairly easy. It's something that a lot of things have pathing for already. It's not a particularly difficult thing to implement in a game. But there's no reason for them to do it, because they're making money. So if they've got money coming in, why put in more effort when they can just put a fresh paint of coat, slightly update the graphics and toss the same game out of the door with almost no changes under the hood, implement some of the more popular mods into the game, and then don't make any major changes, just add a couple of new shiny vehicles every once in a while, and then generate tens of millions per year with almost no development costs on top of it, because they're not doing anything to the fucking game. That is something that I despise. I do not like a company that doesn't do it. As a sort of juxtaposition for this, if you look at Face Punch games, they sold Rust to people. You pay once. You can buy the DLCs if you want. None of them are pay to win. They don't have any sort of true effect. They brought in music for some, which was hysterical. They brought in some water guns and some water park stuff for others. They did stuff that was fun, that you could get something that would be a laugh and support the game. They released skins at a specific money, so there's no loot boxing amongst it. You know what you're buying, and you can trade it if you wish. But people have supported that game, and without being required to buy another thing, they have put more work into their game by a factor of 10 than Giant Software has put into their own one. It is ridiculous how little work this developer puts out there, and it's something where they have a dedicated fan base. You would think if somebody is doing something so nice for you, you would give something back, even if it's just making a better game with the minimal requirements. But they don't bother doing it because the money's rolling in, so why the hell should they? So they don't give a shit about their fan base. They couldn't care less. They do the token gestures to get that out there. And this I sort of wanted to put out there as an example of the difference between a game that I have respect for the developers versus one that I have zero respect for the developers. Because the difference is how they treat it. If everybody in EVE Online wanted a particular ship, they were asking for a particular ship, they begged for it, the developers would do it. They would not drop everything, but they would get it done as fast as possible. And if you don't believe that, look at the mining barges and Exhumers, because that's exactly where they came from. The vast majority of the player base said we need something better for mining, so they created something better for mining. It was fantastic. Now, if a single person is out there, or a couple of people are out there saying, where is my haulers? I really want my insert Jovian, insert Triglavian, whatever. Something they've got partially already. Well, I'm not enough of a crowd to be able to say that. And by the way, please, if you have the ability to like push comments about the Triglavian haulers. They are in the game. There is a model in the game. They just aren't available yet because they haven't balanced stats or done whatever. But they do exist in Poshvin as NPCs. But that's something where, for those of you that weren't in the game at the time, before Exhumers, the meta was apocalypses. You would take an apocalypse battleship, you'd fill it full of miner 2s and a couple of CPU boosters in the low slots, and you would mine and just constantly be flipping cargo out of the ship for your haulers to come and get. It was where the sort of flipping mechanic came from in the first place, so that people could have a little bit more content, a little bit more sort of access to this. And then a little while later they said we need something bigger, and that became orcas and rock wheels. That's something where there has been feedback, something that's been a major change to a significant section of the game, something added for the player experience. Since day one, they have been asking for better AI, and a decade down the line, Giant Software has said, no, it's difficult, but we don't really want to. We don't like it. Just no. To put this in context, as somebody who is actually a fan of this game, I think this is a very calming game. You go and do this stuff you put on your podcasts. Now, I haven't played so much recently because I've been doing this as a job. So instead of driving a tractor online, I have been driving a tractor and clearing fields and doing all sorts of stuff and listening to podcasts. So I've been doing the same thing. But even at that, when the new game comes out, I take a look at it. I own, let me have a look, I own 13, 15 and 19. And then I think I own 16 or 14 on the Nintendo Switch, whichever one is there. Because I used to travel an awful lot and it's something quite calming. Just, plough a couple of fields, do a little thing like that. Something to tick the mind away while I'm travelling. And on a computer it's a little bit of calm time. Something that's nice and relaxing. I have kids now, so I don't know how to relax anymore, but I used to play this. When the new ones come out, I'll put some money in. I'll have a look at it. Because it takes less than 2 hours within the refund time on Steam to go through the game and go, hey, what's new? And then you go, nothing. And when I say nothing, there has been slight updates. But if you compare them to the modded version of 19 that's in front of you, there is no updates. There is a slight graphical polish, not much more. That's it. It's like, what? How is it you have had 5-6 years of development on this and still can't compete with the modding community from 5 years ago? You can take from them, you just can't compete with them. It just drives me insane. I hate this. As a games development company that's making something, if you're going to put something out there, put some pride in your work. And this isn't just a gaming thing. I have worked with people, I've worked at carpenters' places where I've been building stuff, and they're going, no, just do it fast, I don't care. You're like, but that's not finished, it's rough, it's not nice. No, it's speed. Like, have some fucking pride in your work. If you're just in it for the money, then admit that. Don't put out the second game. It just winds me up when I'm seeing this. It's slop that's put out there. The first game was brilliant. The second game was some decent increases. I would agree with the idea of putting out the Switch things. I think putting them out on multiple platforms is a good idea. I have multiple games that I own on separate platforms. I used to have an Xbox 360. Almost every game for the 360 I also have on PC and Steam. I will buy on multiple platforms. I very much dislike throwing out slop. I dislike somebody that is in it not to make a game, but to make something that will make them money. In it for the grind, in it for the coin or something like this, and not really giving a shit, because those are the worst types of games, and that's what this game got turned into. The worst kind of game. The same stuff year on year. Oh, there's a couple of extra tractors in this. There's a couple of extra things. Oh, well, we have to put licensing money into getting some of the tractors and some of the brands and stuff like. Not as much as you think. Because the licensing, I actually know people at Ponce, I've spoken about this, where their licensing is almost non-existent. Why? Because they wanted their image out there. Because somebody that is a kid that likes playing this game, likes messing about with it, will take their favourite vehicle. And then if they get older and they go into that as a career, they will be sort of leaning towards the vehicles that they like. At this moment in time, it was something that the guy from Ponce was saying, that they had a problem with Komatsu, because a lot of people in Finland prefer Komatsu vehicles, especially people that are like 20 to 40, prefer Komatsu vehicles over Ponce for no legitimate reason aside from that's what they played in games when they were younger. And that's a bit of a problem with Ponce. That's what one of the guys was saying. I've driven both vehicles when it comes to forestry machines, forwarders specifically. I've driven, I think, everything that's out there from Komatsu in 3 different versions of Ponce. And they're great. They're fantastic machines. All of them. They've got slightly different methods of control, but they all do the work pretty much the same. I wouldn't switch one over the other. The only real difference is you go up in price, they get a little bit better, but that happens with both companies. And there's a particularly small Komatsu machine out there that is hysterical to drive. It's kind of like if you've gone from driving a large pickup, like an American pickup, to driving a Mini. It is really fun in a weird way. But that's something that these companies are happy to do, so the licensing requirement isn't anywhere near as much as some people talk about. Some of the bigger end car manufacturers, yeah, sure, because they know they can make the money off of it. But machine companies and stuff like this, nah, it ain't the same thing. So this is something that just pisses me off in general, because somebody coming out and saying, well, that's a significant cost. No, it's not, and you know it's not. So you're lying about it. That's why they never put the costs out there. But they'll make any excuse to try and justify the price of their game. That at the moment, the farming simulator that's currently out is actually more buggy than this one. I think it's 25 that's out at the moment. It is just bugs up the wazoo. It is far worse than this. There's a couple where you're just driving along and then all of a sudden you're at altitude, significant altitude, and it just janks out and crashes the entire game. You're like, why? I genuinely, when I was testing the game out, had it break on me 6 times in a hard crash to blue screen twice. It's like, that's the first time I've had a blue screen in a decade. How did it break it that bad? But especially when this game runs perfectly fine, it's not a big issue with it. I have this on an awful lot on my computer because my son loves these things, loves driving them. He's a wee lad, he quite likes the steering wheel and all that jazz, and I've got the steering wheel and the little control box that they made for this because it's fun. But yeah, I wouldn't put any more money into this. Oh, in fact, I would put money into it. I would test it. I would buy it, which is what I have done. But then finding that they haven't really changed it in any meaningful way, especially when the most requested feature is still not in it, it just kind of shows the level of development. That's why when I'm talking about EVE Online, I'm constantly saying this is not malicious what they are doing. It is a perspective issue. It's a disconnect issue. The developers from EVE Online have their own environment. Most of them have been developing the game for a significant amount of time, so they're in their development bubble. They don't play the game the same way that the heavier players do it. They don't put hours in a day. They put hours into the actual development. So that gives them a different perspective. Then you've got the feedback issue, where the most vocal feedback in the game is not from the biggest group of player base. It's from the nullsecers. That's the most niche group for feedback. You get almost no feedback. As far as I am aware, on the CSM, there is no representative of the solo play community. And there very seldom is. They are all alliance peoples, because by our nature, we're more independent, more individual. So getting somebody to vote for them, it's... the only way you really get that is when it is either somebody that's part of a big group or somebody that's got a big social media following. Because if you're a solo player named Jim Jackoff, then how is anybody else going to know who he is? It's a solo player, by definition. So that's a problem. And when they're asking for feedback in the questionnaires, some of it gets put out there, most of it gets ignored. And a little while back they used to talk about these questionnaires for people that have left, and I imagine that was to do with people that closed their accounts. But the vast majority of people that leave EVE don't close their accounts. I have taken long gaps. As I've said before, there's been gaps of quite significant amount of time over my playthrough. And out of all of them, I've never received one of the questionnaires. Why have you left EVE? Why aren't you playing? I've received adverts up the wazoo for Plex. I've received the short, this is a temporary thing if you don't act within the next 3 days. Well, I'm not that kind of person that has that disposable income. I don't put myself in a position where, well, I basically have kids. So, if you probably know about it if you do have them, but you're not usually in a place where you can go, hey, I'm just going to drop 50 to 100 quid on a computer game without any notice. No, it's planned out. And when it's coming up so regularly, it's not something that's a big issue. But that's something that is perspective. It's a different perspective. If you are somebody living in a high-income country like Iceland, that affects your perspective. It's very difficult to even have a homeless population in the country that the developers live in because winter's cold. It's the same as Finland here. Homelessness is almost sort of non-existent because a cold winter will kill off the homeless. So there are other social controls. It's a politer country. But that doesn't even adjust for bias in Scotland. So it's something that I think that's something that's quite important. And especially when you're talking about the actual content of the feedback, the information that they're getting, and critique. You should never assume that somebody's done something that's malicious when stupidity or perspective could explain it. And a lot of people are going, the developers hate the community. No. They don't hate the community. They might hate individual people if you've properly pissed them off. And I imagine I could be amongst that for some of the developers. But it's also a case of, it's not a hatred to the player base. They want to do the best. They are trying to make a product that is successful. but they're in a bit of a loop. And a lot of game companies get into this loop. A lot of companies outside the gaming get into this loop where they get stuck sort of in the focus of what they're doing and they can't see the forest for the trees. It's something that is very common. It's unfortunately common. It's just human nature. How do you know something outside of your information? If you see all of the stuff that's close, how do you see past it? It's very difficult for a lot of people. And there's a lot of comments, an awful lot of comments that come up on a regular basis saying, oh no, it's just because they hate us. No. They want to get money from you. They want to extract money for you. That's how they survive. A games company with no money coming in doesn't make a game. There is no such thing as a free-to-play game. There is a game that has a free version, but they will push a way of making money. And EVE Online wasn't that. It started as a subscription. There is a demo version called Alpha where you could test out a lot of this stuff. But if you want access to all of it, you need to put into it because there's a lot of stuff behind it. There's a lot of server shards and stuff like this. There's also that fact that comment that a lot of people put out there where they're talking about the fact that, oh well, this is just disgraceful, they're spending money on other games. That's what a game developer should be doing. The problem that CCP has had is a lack of feedback. Something that I was actually very interested to see in the live stream the other day because they were clearly taking feedback and they were talking about it and they weren't sugarcoating anything, saying that this is a brutal game. They didn't say it, but my imagination of EVE Frontier is the fact that it is pretty much somebody that has taken EVE Online and said, what if we mash Dark Souls into this? Not the game, but the brutality, the mentality. Or what if we took Clear Skies and put that... Stalker, that's the game. Yeah. The Stalker mentality, the Stalker game. For those of you that haven't played the Stalker games, they are fantastically brutal. You can put 200 rounds into an enemy and not kill it, and if it twicks you in the head, you're gone. But that's the kind of brutality. They want a hardcore gaming experience. And I am sure there are a lot of people that are crying out for that. My question is a question of balance. Is the vast majority of people don't sort of appeal to that. Gaming is not that. While there's been a lot of sort of information out there and all of the streamers playing the harder games, the Souls-like games, they also have a smaller market share. They have a higher market share in streamers. And there was a couple of comments saying, this would be good for streaming. And it's like, yeah, but not everybody's a streamer. In fact, your main groups of people are not streamers. And some of the best games for streaming or for YouTube are not games that are particularly good on their own, because they take time, phenomenal amounts of time. There's a lot of grind that can be clipped through, or the fact that you're talking to a large group of people and having discussion is sort of taking away from the grind. And that's something that needs to be paid attention to. Just because it streams well doesn't mean it plays well. Vice versa. Just because it plays well doesn't mean it streams well. But you could have something that is a fantastic game and is just kind of boring to watch somebody else playing. While simultaneously, I mean, just in front of you, a perfect example. I find Farming Simulator quite a satisfying thing, quite a calming thing. But without me talking, try watching through this. It's just up and down and up and down and a different vehicle going up and down. So there's a difference between something that is sort of plays well and something that would be of mass market appeal, even niche market appeal. But at the very least, they're being honest. They're putting it out there, they're putting their opinion out there. You might disagree, I might disagree. Some people are saying that it shouldn't even exist. I don't agree with that. I think that a game company that doesn't innovate, that doesn't try and do something else, is dead. And also a game company that's just trying to recreate the same thing is also dead. That was exactly what was happening to Call of Duty. Okay, one came out, Modern Warfare 1, Modern Warfare 2, Modern Warfare 3, fantastic. Then what was it, Black Ops or the Sneaky Ones. The first one was alright, the second one was mediocre, and then they slowly went downhill year after year, to the point where it seriously affected their sales, and they had to actually go back and do something proper with the games. Put in a new storyline, because, they play it for the multiplayer. Well, it turns out actually they don't. They play it for the single player, and then they enjoy the multiplayer. But if you don't have the single player, most people couldn't be asked for the game. So they learned a lesson, and they started putting out a bit better product. Eve Frontier at the moment looks very unfinished, because it is. But they're talking about it, they're being honest about it, and they're taking feedback. They're watching people, they're paying attention to what people put out there. Now, hopefully, that is a signal that it's not just that they are looking at other things at the same time, that they are looking at what's going on. If you are a company that, while having more money, is losing players, you should be looking at the player base, and all of the player base, all of the niche groups. And you should be taking anybody in the office that says, our sandbox game needs to be played one way. If you're not playing it with PvP, you're not playing it right. It's like, what's the most common thing you put out? You put out the monthly financial report. The financial report. Industry drives the entire game. And you are talking about conflict as the main driver. No, the industry is the driver. Come on, let's meet the kayak paddle, let's have a little bit of a spanking and then teach you this lesson again and again and again. Building always beats destruction, no matter what. The only way that destruction is the winner is when there is no consequence for it. If you are the United States military rolling into Iraq in the late 90s, early 2000s, and just pummeling the entire military, it's because there was no real consequence. It's not like Iraq could fight back, could harm the continental United States. They couldn't do anything against the military. They were outnumbered. They were outgunned. There was no consequence for that. Put that in a different way. Do you see Latvia invading Russia? No, of course not. Why? Because you're picking a fight with a bigger entity. You don't see conflict unless one side initiates the conflict because they think they can win. If you've got a game where the vast majority of people will lose, that is an interesting situation. That's a problem. It's a problem just for actually buying a game. If you buy a game that you hear is boring, you're going to go, well, then why would I play it? Okay, so you need to get your game loop down. You need to figure out what is the hook. The hook being building is always the best option. It's what we do. And the developer the other day talking about it, Maximum Cats, who I think is just the way that he was talking about what was going on, I think it was brilliant. But one of the things that he was talking about was the feeling of Old Eve and the satisfaction that you got from it. But the satisfaction for a lot of people was either destroying, in which case for everybody that's feeling satisfaction, other people are not, or it was for building. Building the first outposts, building posses, setting up your stuff, conquering your space, creating areas. Even so recently as Poshfin. The whole Poshfin where people got to build something that was their own. Stations, outposts, constructing their own stuff, building their own ships. This is what drives the vast majority of the players. This is what's interesting, creating something new, harvesting the materials to do it. There are players that are just jump in and, much like Farming Simulator, just play through a thing, just a few missions, a little bit of mining, something kind, cathartic, all of that jazz. But the driving stuff is what is creation. Putting up that first outpost with ISS is as ingrained in my memory as putting up my first POS with the corporation that I was in at the time. Just a couple of guys, not even 10 of us, that spent 3 days non-stop, no sleep. The hour break, because downtime used to be an hour, was us running down to the shop, grabbing some food, eating a microwaved burger and getting back onto it and keeping going. And this was the energy. It was putting in everything because it was creation, it was fantastic. when you take that creation away from people, it's not good. Especially that it happened very recently when they changed the manufacturing requirements for a lot of the the faction battleships. So people had built up this, they had their systems, they had their ideas, and they went, hey, no, we're changing that, we're pulling it out. And the price immediately skyrocketed because a lot of people didn't want to change. And it slowly crept in as other people came in to fill the gaps. But that manufacturing change also had a noticeable drop-off in people as well. Now, I'm hypothesizing that that was related because of timing, but it's something interesting. Nobody has all the information outside of the guys there, and that's fair play. You don't always want to put out all the information, but it should be looked at. It should be paid attention to. So, yeah, that's it. Thank you for today's TED Talk. Thank you for paying attention. If you have stayed this long, it's very interesting. As per usual, please put your comments, your ideas, and most importantly that I'm asking for, if you've managed to get this long, if you've got a game that you found great, if you've got a company that you dislike because of their game products, or like sort of like or dislike, please put them down below. I am very curious what you consider very good or very bad. It's something I'm going to be doing a bit of in the future, is going through games sort of unrelated to EVE, just games for the sake of games that I think are very good. Maybe I'll do some bad ones, but it's more promoting. I like the idea of sort of sharing the stuff that I think is cool, because a lot of the games that I've come into that have turned out to be really amazing have been stuff that I've seen on YouTube or promoted by other people, sometimes just one-offs, like Robass, when he was playing Kerbal Space Program, that put me down 10,000 hours in that game, minimum. I don't know how much it was, because I had multiple clients running multiple mod things, and there was a whole load of spiel over on me very old channel, Our House Nitola, where I did a whole Carborundum quest, a big playthrough of building and stuff like that. So if you are that way inclined and you would like to leave a comment, thanks very much. For those of you that have subscribed, for those of you that don't subscribe but you do watch, thank you. This has actually been, it's been nice. It's been sort of, it's given me the warm fuzzies that people like this enough to subscribe, and that I've got more subscribers coming in, that people think this is interesting, and simultaneously that it's actually built it to the point where there might be a bit of money coming in from it. I say a bit of money, enough to finance EVE or finance another game every couple of months, but still, that is heartwarming that it might actually help me make a bit more on the channel. So that is something that is genuinely touching. Those of you that comment, I love it all. Thank you. You've sort of decided that you want to give even more of your time to sort of talk about that. As per usual, always be nice to people. There has been a little bit of name calling and things recently, and those comments just get book flicked out of the way. But with that, if it's comments, critiques, you like, you don't like, that's all fine. Personal attacks, I don't stand for. But aside from that, rock on, guys. You're fantastic. Thank you very much. So, with that being said, bye!